The galaxy was a tapestry of civilizations, a delicate balance of cultures woven together by treaties, alliances, and the ever-present threat of war. Among these, humanity was a relatively new thread, a bold, unpredictable species that had only recently earned a seat at the Interstellar Council. To many of the older races, humans were an enigma, their rapid rise both fascinating and unsettling. To me, they were something more. My name is Calvir, a diplomat of the Altar Dominion, a species known for its adherence to logic and order. For centuries, my people had served as arbiters of galactic disputes, our decisions respected for their fairness. I had spent decades in this role, negotiating ceasefires, drafting alliances, and navigating the labyrinthine politics of the galaxy. Yet, all my training and impartiality faltered the day I met Commander Alara Brooks. She was humanity in its purest form, sharp-witted, resilient, and unyieldingly curious. Her presence in the council chambers was like a spark in the vacuum of space. Unlike many humans who approach diplomacy with cautious humility, Alara was unapologetically bold. She spoke her mind, even when it ruffled feathers, and often turned tense discussions into moments of levity with her disarming humor. Our paths crossed frequently, her representing Earth's coalition, and I the Dominion. At first, I regarded her with a detached curiosity I extended to all newcomers, but something about her gnawed at the edges of my stoic exterior. It wasn't her appearance, though her features were striking by human standards, but the energy she carried, a force of nature wrapped in a fragile, mortal shell. The realization of my growing fascination came slowly, like a star emerging from a nebula. Diplomacy had always been my sanctuary, a place where personal emotions held no sway. Yet, I found myself looking forward to her voice cutting through the static of debates, her laugh softening the edges of interstellar conflicts. When I finally admitted to myself the depth of my feelings, I was equal parts exhilarated and horrified. Among the Alhar, emotions were not a weakness, but they were private, shared only in the most intimate of bonds. To feel this way about a human, a species whose customs were so alien to my own, was unthinkable. But logic, my steadfast companion, offered me no refuge. For once, my heart was louder than my mind. I approached her cautiously, masking my intent under the guise of diplomatic discourse. Over shared meals and late-night strategy sessions, I learned about her life on Earth, her struggles, and her dreams. She told me of her childhood beneath skies of firework-laden celebrations, her father's stories about Earth's long-forgotten oceans, and her relentless drive to ensure humanity's place among the stars. One evening, as we lingered in the empty council chamber, the conversation turned personal. I spoke of my homeworld, with its crystalline spires and tranquil oceans, and she listened intently, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the chamber's ambient light. There was a pause, a moment where words faltered, and unspoken truths hung in the air like static before a storm. "Alara," I began, my voice betraying a hesitation unfamiliar to me. "There is something I must confess. Among my people, connections are forged not through necessity but choice. And I find myself choosing you." She blinked, her expression shifting from curiosity to something unreadable. "Calvir," she started, then paused, her gaze steady yet softened. "I don't know how to say this without sounding cruel, but humans don't date aliens. It's not that I don't respect you, I do. But it's complicated." Her words hit with the force of a collapsing star. I had expected skepticism, even rejection, but not the simplicity with which she dismissed the possibility. "Complicated?" I echoed, more to myself than to her. She nodded, her tone gentle but firm. "Our cultures, our biology, our entire worlds are different. Relationships like that don't just affect two people. They ripple across everything." I could have argued, pointed out the treaties that had already brought disparate civilizations together. I could have challenged her perspective with the same fervor I used in council debates. Instead, I only nodded. "I understand," I said, though the ache in my chest suggested otherwise. The silence that followed was deafening. When she finally rose to leave, I remained seated, staring at the polished surface of the council table. For the first time in my life, I felt powerless, a diplomat undone not by war or politics, but by the complexities of the heart. As she disappeared through the chamber doors, my resolve crystallized. If humanity had taught the galaxy anything, it was that the impossible could be made possible. And if Alara thought cultural barriers were insurmountable, then I would tear them down, one treaty at a time. The idea formed like a seed taking root in fertile soil. I would draft a treaty, not of necessity or commerce, but of love, a document that would reshape how the galaxy viewed interspecies connections. It was audacious, perhaps even foolish, but for the first time, I understood the human phrase Alara so often used: go big or go home. With a deep breath, I rose from my seat. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I would rewrite the stars if I had to. The council chamber was an arena of discord. Voices from dozens of species clashed, their tones rising and falling like waves in a storm. At the center of it all stood Alara, her human frame dwarfed by the towering forms of alien diplomats, but her voice cutting through the cacophony with the precision of a blade. "Enough," she declared, slamming her palm against the table. "If we keep pointing fingers, the only thing we'll accomplish is tearing ourselves apart while the threat out there grows stronger." I watched her with a mixture of pride and unease. It had been weeks since our private conversation, weeks since her words had ignited a resolve within me. In that time, I had worked tirelessly, drafting a treaty so audacious it bordered on madness. Yet here she was, unaware of the depth of my efforts, focused solely on the immediate crisis threatening the galaxy. The threat came from the Corthan swarm, a hive-mind species whose territory lay at the edge of known space. For centuries, they had remained isolated, uninterested in the affairs of the wider galaxy. But something had changed. Reports of their fleets attacking unaligned planets had trickled in, followed by a devastating revelation. The swarm was expanding, consuming everything in its path. The Interstellar Council was paralyzed. Old grudges and political infighting prevented any unified response. Each species feared sacrificing their resources for a cause that might not directly threaten them. A short-sightedness Alara was desperately trying to overcome. "We need to act as one," she continued, her voice firm yet tinged with frustration. "The swarm doesn't care about our borders or treaties. They're a force of nature, and if we don't stand together, we'll all fall separately." Her words stirred something in the assembly. Whispers replaced shouts, and for a brief moment, unity seemed within reach. But then Counselor Threx of the Dren Consortium leaned forward, his segmented eyes glinting with disdain. "And what does humanity propose, Commander?" he sneered. "Your species is young, barely out of its cradle. What makes you think you can lead us?" Alara's jaw tightened, but she held her ground. "We're young, yes, but that means we haven't had centuries to grow complacent. We've faced extinction before, wars, environmental collapse. And we've survived because we adapt, we innovate, and we don't back down from a fight." Her response earned murmurs of approval, even from some of her harshest critics. But Threx's challenge had planted a seed of doubt in the chamber, and I could see Alara struggling to maintain momentum. That was when I stood. "Counselors," I began, my voice calm but carrying the weight of authority. "The Altar Dominion supports humanity's call for unity, but we must go beyond simple cooperation. This crisis is an opportunity, a chance to forge a new kind of alliance, one that transcends mere survival." All eyes turned to me, including Alara's. Her expression was unreadable, a mixture of curiosity and caution. "I have drafted a treaty," I continued, stepping forward and placing a data crystal on the central table. "Not one bound by trade or military necessity, but by understanding. This treaty will formalize the bonds between our species, fostering cultural exchange and mutual respect. It is not enough to fight the swarm as allies. We must emerge as something greater." The chamber erupted into murmurs, but I pressed on. "This is not an idealistic dream. It is a strategic necessity. The swarm thrives on division. To defeat them, we must become more than the sum of our parts. We must embrace what makes us unique and use it to strengthen the whole." Alara's eyes widened slightly as realization dawned. She knew this wasn't just about the swarm. My treaty was a direct challenge to the barriers she had so firmly believed in, a declaration that interspecies cooperation could extend beyond politics and into the personal. Counselor Threck scoffed. "And what guarantees do we have that this idealism won't crumble under pressure? Words on a crystal won't stop the swarm." "No," I agreed, meeting his gaze steadily, "but actions will. Humanity has already shown us the value of their resilience. They have earned their place here not through power, but through determination. This treaty is not just about surviving the swarm. It is about ensuring that when the dust settles, we emerge stronger together." The room fell silent as the weight of my words sank in. Alara looked at me, her expression softer now, as if seeing me in a new light. "If you believe in this treaty," she said after a moment, her voice measured, "then prove it. Stand with us not just in word, but in deed. The swarm is moving on the Vega outpost. Humanity will send its fleet, but we'll need support." I nodded without hesitation. The Aldhar Dominion will stand with humanity. Together, we will show the galaxy what unity looks like. The chamber erupted once more, but this time the voices carried a different tone, one of cautious hope. As the session adjourned, Alara approached me. "That was a bold move," she said, her tone neutral but her eyes searching. "Boldness is a lesson I learned from you," I replied, allowing a small smile to break through my usually stoic demeanor. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Let's hope it's enough." "It will be," I said, though whether I was reassuring her or myself, I wasn't certain. As she walked away, I felt the weight of what lay ahead. The treaty was a step forward, but it was only the beginning. The real test would come in the battles to follow, against the swarm, against prejudice, and perhaps even against the limits of our own understanding. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. The stars above had witnessed countless conflicts, but this time there was a chance to rewrite the narrative. Together, we could prove that even in the face of annihilation, unity was possible. And maybe, just maybe, it could start with two beings daring to believe in something more. The Vega Outpost battle became a turning point in galactic history. Against all odds, the united fleets of the Interstellar Council held their ground. Human ingenuity, paired with the technological precision of allied species, forced the Corthan swarm into retreat. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy tasted not just survival but victory. The council chambers were quieter now, the chaos of war replaced by the delicate work of rebuilding. I stood near the center, watching as representatives of dozens of species reviewed the treaty I had drafted. Its purpose was no longer hypothetical. It had been forged in the fires of battle, its value proven by the alliances that had saved Vega. Commander Alara Brooks entered the room, her uniform immaculate despite the sleepless weeks she had endured. Her presence commanded respect, the kind born not of rank but of deeds. She approached me, her expression a mixture of pride and weariness. "The Council approved the treaty," she said, holding out a data crystal. "Unanimously, no less." I didn't think I'd see that in my lifetime. Her tone was light, But her words carried the weight of history. This was more than a document. It was a promise that the galaxy would not return to its fragmented past, but move forward together. You made this happen, I replied, accepting the crystal. Without your leadership, there would be no treaty, no unity. Humanity has proven itself indispensable to the galaxy. She smiled faintly. And you, Calvir, proved that even the most stubborn minds can be changed, including mine. There it was, the unspoken truth between us. Her rejection weeks ago had been rooted not in disdain, but in fear. Fear of what might be lost or broken in crossing the boundaries between our species. Now, those boundaries had begun to crumble, swept away by the tide of collaboration. I believed in us, I said, my voice steady. Not just humanity and the Alhar, but all of us. Together, we are stronger. Ilara's gaze softened, and for a moment, the weight of her responsibilities seemed to lift. You were right, she admitted. And maybe I was wrong to think some barriers were unbreakable. The words hung between us, fragile yet powerful. It wasn't a confession nor a promise, but an opening, a possibility. As the council meeting adjourned and representatives filed out, I walked with Ilara through the vast corridors of the station. Outside, the stars shimmered, their light unmarred by the darkness of war. Do you think this will last? She asked, gesturing to the treaty. Change is never guaranteed, I replied. But what we've built is more than a treaty. It's a foundation. The rest depends on us. She nodded, her expression contemplative. And what about us? I paused, the question catching me off guard despite everything. That depends on you, I said carefully. But if this treaty proves anything, it's that even the most unlikely connections can reshape the galaxy. She smiled a rare, genuine warmth that illuminated the tired lines of her face. Let's see where it goes then. One step at a time. As we stood beneath the vast expanse of the station's observation dome, the galaxy felt a little smaller, a little more connected. The treaty was signed, the battle was won, but the journey was far from over. Together, we had redefined what was possible. And for the first time in a long while, I felt that the stars above didn't just represent endless possibilities. They represented a future worth fighting for.